Welcome, everyone. I'm Raven Sinclaire here today with Caroline Myss, and I couldn't be happier about that. Caroline is, to make a very prolific story short, a 5-time New York Times bestseller. For over 35 years, she's taught workshops on consciousness and energy healing, mystical theology. She developed the field of energy anatomy, which is a science that correlates specific emotional, psychological, physical, and spiritual stress patterns with diseases. She also co-founded the Caroline Myss Education Institute, and her website is myss.com, where she has a number of courses, talks, and other resources. Caroline, such a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you, Raven. Same here.
You know, over 20 years ago, I was introduced to your work with the book, Why People Don't Heal and How They Can. And I think, like a lot of people during that time, during those years especially, I found your work because I had profound disease patterns in my family and wanted to try to heal those for myself and others. So your work is, I know I speak for multitudes when I say thank you for your profound and immense work in the world.
Oh, thank you.
Of course, and especially your forthright manner in delivery. That's one thing about you, is you are just the embodiment of integrity and authenticity. And so you stand as such a beacon for us. Thank you.
You're welcome. Enough of that. What can we talk about?
This book, your newest book, is Intimate Conversations with the Divine, Prayer, Guidance, and Grace. I loved this book. I read it through once, and now I intuitively open it to what I need to see in the moment. This is a book really for all times, but you speak specifically to this time that we're living in. How do you see this time? What is happening? And why did you choose now to write this book?
Well, I think when you speak about this time, I think we're going through the most extraordinary passage this is a bold statement, but in the history of civilization.
Wow.
It's a big mouthful. Yeah. So it's a long passage, and we're at the beginning of it. And it didn't start now. I think it started when we entered the nuclear age. I think what we did was we released a power of destruction that we were far too immature to manage, which necessitated that we as a species become more aware of that we participate in the co-creation of and the management of life on this planet, and that all life breathes together, and that we needed to become a planetary community. We needed to become a species incapable of using the weapons of destruction that we had created. And so that necessitated that our own evolution go on an exponentially faster trajectory of development. And I think that's what we're on. I think an awareness of our own, we're getting to know ourselves as energetic beings. We're getting to know the fundamentals of co-creation. All of this is causing us, inspiring us, forcing us to re-engage conversations about the myths of God, because the myths of God, as they held together the Abrahamic religions, no longer can contain how we need to engage with the divine as energetic beings sharing one planet that are entering the galactic age, where we may be part of a galactic community. So who we were before the nuclear age and who we are now are two different species. And if you just look at the chaos today, if you are only asking me from the position of look at how chaotic it is because of politics and the virus, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. This is a huge epic we're living. And this is just today's version of it.
Wow. So you, along those same lines, you mentioned in the book that this is the end, that we are ending the religious era, right? And
Well,
mhm,
that's not as simply that's not as simply stated. Or um, we're ending an era of the way in which we have related to the heavens
mhm,
through its iconic, through through half god half man mythologies, through in which we have separated the powers of God through intermediaries.
mhm,
And we were entering the age of co-creation, where those intermediaries are now going to, where that power that they talked about, that they represented, is something that has awakened in us. The laws Jesus taught are now the laws that we realize manage our bio-spiritual ecology.
mm,
So that we have to start living that theology, not because we're part of a religion, but because it manages our health.
sure.
It is a bio-spiritual ecological fact. And it's not a matter of being a Christian or
Mhm,
being a Jew or being a Muslim or being a Druid.
mhm.
It's because God is law and God doesn't have a religion. And we have to transcend this idea of religions as the divisionary force and understand that there is no God that has a religion. We can you want a religion, have a religion, but don't assume that God does. Knock
Understood.
it off, you
Right.
know.
Understood. So really, this is at this time that we're moving into, we are, this is sort of a blending of science and spirit, a blending of the divine and human within each of us. Is that fair to say?
I say a blending. I think
Or a
what it
transcending, maybe?
is, it's an interesting thing. One of the challenges, and I think that's just why I wrote a prayer book, because I got to a place where I actually released my prayer book, where the phenomenon of the mystical realm, what's really happening, we don't have a real good vocabulary
Hmm.
to identify. It's not just a blending, it's actually an awakening of the wiring of our mystical, bio-spiritual, physiological nature.
Wow.
And we have to get beyond the superstitious thinking of religion, which
Hmm.
is very divisive. Remember that when you're in religions, they teach it's us or them. And if you get into holistic health, which is body, mind, spirit, the first law is integration and holism. And if you adhere to your religion that is divisive, it is in contra, it is anathema to the holistic template that manages your health.
Mm,
So right there, one of the two has to go.
sure.
So you have to put the religious teachings aside and say, okay, that simply doesn't serve my own bio-spiritual ecological system anymore. I have to retire anything that tells me to divide, because the impulse now in the collective is become whole, which
Mm,
is not just a health teaching. It is an ecological teaching. It is a community teaching. It is a way of life teaching. It is the way I have to see the galaxy teaching. This is the language of God.
wow, powerful. So you mentioned, well, I want to ask, before I go into that, how do we seize the opportunity of this time as far as the inner work that we all need to do, enhancing our connect, or finding that connection within, finding that embodiment within us, the divine embodiment, while also doing our outer work, creating a different reality that might include things like going out and voting or sacred activism, things like that. So how do we reconcile those two?
What's to reconcile?
Well, I don't know. Is there when you do your inner work, do you automatically know what your outer work is?
My inner work and outer work are one and the same thing.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, that's exactly what my book's about.
Mm-hmm.
I just talk to God. And I, from my point of view, this whole theater of life
Mm-hmm.
is the theater of heaven, of the theater of the divine.
Mm-hmm.
There is no difference for me
Mm-hmm.
between my inner and my outer. And that's the division that has to stop.
Beautiful.
There is no division. Where's the division?
Well, I see exactly what you're saying. And also, I know that because I get these questions sometimes in my work is it important that I go out and do things, or is it more important that I do my inner work? And
What's the difference? And further, and here's a question.
mhm.
When someone says do things, what's a thing? What are you talking about?
Well, I think very 3D things like voting, like I mentioned, voting
You have
or
to vote, but go ahead.
peaceful protesting, things like that.
Well, if people really understood, they really did understand that their thoughts are as powerful as their actions.
Mm.
So you can have someone go out and protest,
Mm-hmm.
and if they are an angry person, they've undone all the benefit to that protest. They don't get it. They don't get it. Or you can have someone who says, I'll join you in your cause
Mm-hmm.
from my room,
Mm.
and I will be in prayer the whole time.
Wow.
And someone can say, well, what good is that? And they don't get it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Choose your weapons. I mean, the fact is, if you really understood the power of grace, you'd realize, and the power of thought, you'd realize that every single moment of every single day, you are protesting
Mm.
in your own way. But by how you live, by every word you say, you're contributing. You are co-creating the world you want. And where people fall short is they want to see an immediate response. They want to see the look on the face of someone when they're protesting going, oh my God, they want to see their actions register on someone's face.
Right.
And that's a weak ego.
Mm-hmm.
That's because I have to see the result of my life every single day. I have to see proof that my life matters every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was their spiritual teacher,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, you're not going anywhere near,
Yeah.
because you don't get how to manage your power.
Mm-hmm.
You want to see your power displayed. You want to be the loudest can in the room, when in fact the most powerful is the silent one,
Mm.
the invisible one. Why is it that when someone reached really high states of enlightenment, they would go off into their caves and people found them because they could hear the light?
Mm.
They sense someone sacred is around here. We'll sniff them out. They weren't there protesting, screaming, but they found them because the
Mm.
magnetics of the light were so powerful.
Wow.
You have to learn how to be the magnetics of light,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and how to use that. And this is where we're in this in-between worlds where nobody trusts that.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody. They don't have any sense of how to trust and work with the magnetics of the light. If
Mm.
they did, you wouldn't ask me questions like you're asking me. Should
Right.
I do this or this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's one and the same thing. It's, how do I work with the magnetics? How do I know when I'm losing power? Why am I so afraid of the light?
Mm,
These are the questions you should be asking me.
right.
Not should I do this task or that. What kind of question is that?
Well, Carolyn, work with me here.
Okay.
I'm just trying, I'm asking some things that I think some readers might ask. I completely understand where you're coming from. You know, I've done a check-in with some things that I was invited to do, various events and things like that. And I've gotten your point of power is sitting with your feet in the creek praying, you know, things like that. So that's what I choose to do. So I understand this. And then there's also there's such pain in the world and people want to do something, and I understand that a lot of times that activism comes from ego, from a displaced ego. But is
No,
there ever a time?
activism doesn't come from a displaced ego.
Okay,
It's
tell
the
me.
need to see your
Mm,
action,
a
the
result.
results.
Gotcha.
No, no, no. I'm all for activism. I
Okay.
am all for saying, you know what? We have to take this to the streets.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
you have to have your power really, you have to hold your power very centered. You have to really be very Buddhist, which is, I have to let the spectacle of all this go.
Mm,
I am here to break a thought form,
mm,
not to break people. I'm here to challenge a thought form that, that, you know, that I am here to incarnate a truth that Black Lives Matter.
mm,
That's my goal. I am channeling that truth.
mm-hmm.
And so all this is an illusion and it's going to come at me. I mean, that training is so powerful.
Oh my goodness. It is.
That training. And you're going to, and all the dark is going to come at you and say, no, no, no. And it's going to hit your weakest link.
Mm,
And that's what you have to be, like a soldier, and
mm-hmm.
not let it come at you, not let it hit your pride, not let it hit your weakest link, and that urge to just want to wring their necks,
Mm-hmm.
because that's how darkness gets in, right there. That's its portal.
Wow. Okay. So from the section in your book that's called "Fractured into Tranquility," you tell us to look for God in the small details. That anything might be a blessing in disguise. So this is so crucial, I know, to our own well-being and our own evolution, our salvation, really. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Well, that was really, I'm very inspired by Teresa of Avila.
Mm-hmm.
And it was her really her teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Look for God in the small details.
Mm-hmm.
And again, and it really, it goes back to a lot of what we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that our tendency when we pray is to want to see a result,
Mm-hmm.
and specifically to see the result we want, and to see the result we want right away.
Mm-hmm.
And and we are accustomed to wanting things big, and we think that in order for something to be effective, I mean, I remember, I remember the way my uncle used to cook.
Mm-hmm.
He made the worst meals, and the thought of going over to his house was like, you've got to be kidding, please mom, anything but that. Because his recipe book was like, if a little was good, a lot was better. And so, whether it was salt or onions or garlic. And so, I mean, eating with, oh, it was a nightmare. And I remember he started out one time with a pound of ground beef to make a meatloaf, and it was 5 pounds when it was done. And there was no more. It wasn't that he added more meat. He put in carrots and he put in potatoes and and it came out and it looked like something nobody ever saw. So we all went out to dinner. But that's how we are, in that when we pray, we actually think we deserve a reward. We
Mm-hmm.
actually think we should see something right away. See, I'm praying, where is it? Do I get it? We
Mm-hmm.
have no idea. We don't get how organic heaven is,
Mm-hmm.
how invisible, and how divine organics work. that they're in this, that you've got to train yourself to look small and you'll be in awe.
Mm.
That's, and when I say small, I mean that from the time you say a prayer, like, get me some help, and I mean now, like I'll oftentimes say, you got to download me with some badass grace because I'm about to lose it here. And from the second I utter a prayer, I assume all systems are engaged to help me. And
Mm.
from that second on, no matter where I look, I feel like I'm in a blanket of grace.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that is now working is working on my behalf.
Yes.
Everything.
Mm-hmm.
Even if my car is stalled,
Mm-hmm.
I am now in the psychic field of my prayer is being answered. And all of this is participating in the answer to my prayer.
Mm.
Everything.
Yes.
With eyes to see,
Mm-hmm.
I am watching my prayer being answered.
Yes.
I am watching it. I am listening to my prayer being answered.
Mm.
I am feeling it being answered. I am living my prayer being answered. It's not a thing. It's not a bunch of money.
Mm-hmm.
I am living the answer to my prayer.
Yes.
It's coming through me. It's around me. It's everywhere.
Mm.
That's how.
Beautiful. And don't you think when we find, when we can connect to the divine within, when we can connect to the God within, we do see God in everything, right? I mean, we can find that in everything. It becomes just automatic.
I think if a person really could, it's a big, huge, great, big, huge mystical truth.
Mm-hmm.
God is everything. Where does creation stop and start? Here's my book, and here's a pen, and this. All of this is part of is God. Why do I say that? Because it's all created from that which came from life, and all life is God. We are in God. We're the whole theater of life, all the galaxies, all everything. This is all God.
Yes.
And it's hard to conceive of that. And, all we can do is talk about it because it doesn't fit into us.
Mm-hmm.
It's like taking a grain of sand and saying to this, and trying to shove the universe into that grain of sand. And yet, paradoxically, if you took the grain of sand apart, all the elements that are in the universe are in that grain of sand.
Mm.
So you see, what is in one is in the whole.
Exactly.
And so we are the whole.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are like micro earths of the macro earth.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to start thinking of yourself as floating in God.
Yes.
So I am breathing the grace of God. I'm walking in God. So
Mm.
now when I think about it, no wonder you hear everything.
Mm.
No wonder you see everything. You have to adjust your sights. And then you realize where in the space that you live, anywhere in that beautiful room you're sitting in, or when you're out in the park, or where do the laws of the universe stop working for you?
Mm.
I mean, if you jumped off that table, would you fall? Would you go down? Would gravity work? Yes. Okay. If you jumped off the building you're living in, would gravity take you to the ground?
It
So
would.
you have to think, at what hour of the day does gravity turn off? No hour. What state is gravity not working in? What country? Over what aquatic body? Okay, so the law of gravity works everywhere you are, no matter if you're awake, asleep, what, doesn't matter. Think of that
Mm-hmm.
as an expression of God everywhere, 24/7, consistent. The law of cause and effect, everywhere, all the time, consistent. So it's here in the air.
Mm-hmm.
It's here in the air. Gravity is active in the air. I can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot see it. But it's a force that is that, watch this, I'll drop my pen. It's going down. It's not going up.
Exactly.
So this force is governing my atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Cause and effect is governing my atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
So there are governing forces here that I don't have to think about, but boy, they're there. That's the nature of God. That is
Mm-hmm.
God
Exactly.
in the laws. And the thing that you have to understand about that is the presence of the laws are conscious.
Mm-hmm.
These are the laws of science, but these same laws in the soul are what they call the mystical laws. They're exactly the same, except that at the level of the soul, they're malleable and they speak to us. These are the laws that form like mist before ice.
Mm-hmm.
They govern the choices we make. Do you want to put gravity? Do you want to give gravitas to what you're looking at? Do you want to give weight to that? Or do you want to let it go? A spectacle as you're marching.
Mm.
Do you want to attach to that spectacle? Or do you want to, in Buddha wisdom, treat it as an illusion? Of course people are going to come at you. It doesn't matter. It's not personal. Let it go. You should expect this.
Mm.
This is what happens when you challenge a thought form and try to give birth to something higher. Learn the universe.
Mm.
Learn.
Wow. So you covered several of the Hermetic principles there. That's what I teach. I've studied them for over 20 years. So this is music to my ears. And I was thinking of,
Because truth is truth.
it is.
And if you cannot find it, you'll find the same laws in all systems because God is law.
Mm.
And that's where we're going, Graven.
Mm-hmm.
We're going into a biospiritual ecological theology
Mm-hmm.
where we will know God as law, the laws of nature, the hermeneutic laws,
Mm-hmm.
the laws that Jesus taught, the laws that Buddha taught. It's all law. We're leaving the era where we have to build statues that look like us and say, here, this is, no,
Right.
God is law. And what makes this, and it's impersonal.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing personal about gravity or cause and effect or action and reaction or all the laws of Buddhism.
Sure.
But what makes it personal, intimate, is prayer.
Mm. Which you say is a lost language, but we are bringing it up again, right?
Precisely.
Yeah. I was thinking of the principle of mentalism when you were talking at the beginning of the conversation, which tells us that we began as thoughts in the mind of God. And the thing that we have forgotten is that we have never left the mind of God.
Precisely. Isn't that wonderful?
It's
We dwell with God, in God. And what we don't get is that is the is that it is all creation.
Mm.
And that the teachers that have come down to say, look, this is how it works,
Mm-hmm.
have always taught, don't get caught up in illusions. You see something and you start craving it and you decide, if I don't have that, I'll just die. You're going to die, but it's got nothing to do with that. And what these great masters have taught is this vibration destroys, this vibration thrives.
Mm.
What is so complicated? Love thrives, hate destroys. Now, what's the matter with you?
Mm.
Why do we find that so complicated? Why, when people crave love and it feels so good, do they need therapy to use that vibration? Oh my God, I'm so afraid to love. What's the matter with you? You're not afraid to hate and be bitter and angry. People should have therapy I have to go near anger. I'm so afraid of it. It's so awful. Nobody ever needs therapy to be angry.
Right.
And it's the worst thing in the world.
Mm.
But the thing they really crave and the power of love, oh, I don't know. Oh, I don't know. What is wrong with us?
It is crazy. It is crazy, isn't it?
We're so upside down. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well,
Unbelievable.
It is. It is. This is classic Caroline Myss, I have to say, this interview. So thank you for that. Thank you for being yourself, Carolyn.
So
And
is this what people mean when they say I'm direct?
I think it is. I think it is. In your final thoughts in the book, Carolyn, you speak of faith and how difficult it can be. And you mention a quote, another quote by Teresa of Avila, and truer words, this is at the end of your book, truer words have not been spoken. I'm not going to share that quote because it's perfect where it is in the book, and I'll let readers find it and contemplate it on their own. But for your final thoughts in this moment, for those who are watching and listening, what's coming up for you to share?
Well, I will be doing another reflections class. I love to teach. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think I was born to teach.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And so I'm going to start a new class on November 10th, and it's called Through the Firewall.
Mm-hmm.
And it is about the challenges of uh, finding a prayer life, but how that leads to, you know, healing and the fear of healing and the fear of a deep prayer life, because it is so powerful. So the firewalls we put up between our mystical really cracking through our to our soul and keeping that power at a distance.
Mm. Wow, I want to ask you about one more thing. I'm excited about that class. I will be in it. um, there's a part of your book, I think it's Reflections on Evil, where you say when you sense that you're compromising who you are, recognize that sensation as a soul alert.
Mhm.
Now, a few years ago, because I follow Caroline Myss a few years ago, and I had to look this up, but on an Oprah interview, you had said, when your life begins to harm you, know that you have taken a detour from your true path.
Mhm.
Those two phrases were spoken years apart. They mean similar things. I wonder if you can tell me what you meant then and what you mean now, and if that has evolved.
Well, you know, your life shouldn't harm you, which is a very interesting thing to think about, isn't it?
It is.
Um, which doesn't mean there isn't pain and difficulty in life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the amount of suffering that a person has is pretty self-regulated.
Mm.
Pain is one thing. I mean, the loss of family members, the loss of the loss of, I lost my brother. I lost you. You lost a beloved friend a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
This is life, Raven.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they decide it's time for me to leave the planet. Okay, and our response is, I'll see you later. Wait for me. We're
Mm.
not far behind.
Sure.
Okay, and and so these are what our great teachers have said. Look, life is cycles. We know this, and we can't tell ourselves that life is going to be not cycles and not full of of death and new beginnings for everybody else, but not for us.
Mm.
We can't be that foolish.
Right.
Okay. Suffering, on the other hand, is when we are that foolish.
Mm.
And when we make choices where we knowingly act in opposition to what we are always guided to do or say or be. When we, for example, withhold love, and every part of us is saying, say a kind word.
Mm.
Say a kind word. You can do better than this. Why are you turning off love when in fact that's exactly what would get you out of this? Why are you gossiping and hurting that person? Why are you engaging in patterns that create suffering and destruction? Because you're jealous of this or that. What it's your own darkness
Mm.
that creates suffering. And that's an optional path.
Mm.
That's option. Pain We all have. Suffering is our option. You don't, you don't, I mean, I've overeaten and I've paid the price for that,
Mm-hmm.
and that was my choice, and I've popped my share of Pepsids,
Mm-hmm.
but, those choices, and someone could say, well, it's fear. I don't accept that answer. I don't accept that. I think fear lets people off the hook. I'm like, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid? And why aren't you dealing with that fear?
Mm.
And when it comes down to, I'm fear of being humiliated. So what? Get humiliated and get it over with.
Right.
Go out and have a humiliation party and get it over with
Mm.
and get through that firewall. But to let a fear give you permission to make dark choices every single day, and you think that is a better path, you're out of your mind.
Mm.
So,
Powerfully said, yes.
do you see what I'm saying?
I do. I absolutely do. Yes. Yes.
And
Thank you for looking at that.
yeah, and I just and we all have to go through this.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody is born with self-esteem. We
Mm-hmm.
all have to put ourselves together. We all have to face rejection and, oh, that didn't feel good. And
Mm-hmm.
we all have to get our sea legs in this world. And we all have to think, okay, I have to look outside and think, how am I going to survive in this big planet and find our way? It's not easy for anybody, but that's the thing. You put a little sign in your pocket and says this, okay, this isn't going to be easy. It's not easy for anyone. Here I go.
Mm.
And we take it one block at a time. And then you come back home and you think, all right, tomorrow I'm going to walk 2 blocks. And then one day you're walking a mile and one day you know your hood.
Mm.
That's life.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, Caroline, I so appreciate you being here with me. Again, your newest book is Intimate Conversations with the Divine. It is available from a number of sources, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Booktopia, and Indigo. It's one that everyone needs to get. Order extras for holiday copies for your friends. You'll want to turn to it again and again. And again, Caroline's website is myss.com. That's myss.com. You can find all kinds of information there. Caroline, such a treat.
May I add, my class will be posted in a week on
Oh, good.
through the firewall. I'm just going through the editing of it and before I post it. And so thank you. Thank you, Raven. This has been fun.
It has been fun. Such a privilege. Thank you, Caroline. And to all of you who are watching or listening, thanks for spending this time and space with us. Take good care, everyone.